there, everybody, and welcome to the 10-minute quick start guide to the HPA axis and stress-related conditions. I am your host, Dr. Dawn-Elise Snipes. So, as the name implies, this is just a really high-level overview, but I think it's really important right now to start opening the narrative and talking about how we can be healthy, how we can not only survive but thrive in the current environment. So I'm going to start out by talking about something called the HPA axis, or the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is more commonly known as your stress response system. Now, the HPA axis does a lot of really awesome things, but it is also intertwined with pretty much every other bodily system. So when the HPA axis is having problems, it means there's probably going to be problems systemically. So one of the things that we need to think about when we're talking about resilience and health promotion is what can we do to make sure this HPA axis is functioning properly. As I said, the HPA axis is your stress response system. It increases cortisol, which is your stress hormone, norepinephrine, which is basically your focus neurochemical, and glutamate, which is your main excitatory or energy producing neurotransmitter. When those things are increased, not only are you able to focus more and you have theoretically more energy, but your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, and your blood sugar goes up. Your body wants you to be able to fight or flee. And when the HPA axis is activated, that means you are basically revving your engine. You are getting ready to go. And it also increases inflammation, which is really cool because our body figures that if we're fighting or fleeing, when we develop injuries, it needs to heal. Inflammation sends blood to that area wherever it thinks there's a problem in order to nourish that area and help it heal. The problem is when that stress response system or HPA axis is activated for a long period of time, we tend to start seeing inflammation throughout the system, including in our gut, and we start to see inflammatory biomarkers that contribute to the development of depression. So, like I said, when that stress response system starts to go a little bit haywire or it's been revved up for too long, you start to see other problems throughout your entire mental and physical health system. When the HPA axis or the threat response system is activated, other things it does include reducing quality sleep. Now, you may think, well, that doesn't make any sense, but it really does, because if your body thinks it's under a threat, then why would you want to be completely vulnerable in a deep sleep? So by preventing you from getting quality sleep, it's keeping you lightly asleep so you can spring into action at any moment if there is an imminent threat to your life or well-being. From a survival perspective, that sounds great, but from a modern day stress perspective, it ain't so good. A lot of people right now are under chronic stress for a variety of reasons. And when you don't get enough sleep, one of the byproducts of that, not only are you hypervigilant, as we say, and aware enough to kind of spring to life at any given moment, but lack of quality sleep also contributes to confusion, fatigue, as well as further activation of that HPA axis. When we are fatigued, our body says, oh, hey, I need to dump more glutamate to help you wake up and more glucose to give you energy to keep going. So it's a self-fulfilling cycle, if you will. So we need to break that cycle and let the HPA axis rest. The HPA axis, when it's activated, also reduces certain types of serotonin. There are multiple types of serotonin. It's not just one that is involved with depression. So it's important to recognize that serotonin is involved in just about every bodily function, from digestion to concentration to sleep to mood to, you name it, it's involved in it. And when serotonin levels get wonky, you're also going to have some systemic problems. The final thing that we're going to talk about that the HPA axis does, which makes sense, in order to help keep us vigilant for that fight or flee sort of behavior, it reduces GABA, which is our natural Valium, if you want to think about it that way. So it reduces our calming chemicals, it increases our stress chemicals in order to keep us safe, theoretically. In today's world, a lot of us experience chronic stress, which keep this HPA axis hyperactivated. So what do we do about it? Well, we can start by healing, and this is where the Quickstart guide comes in. Now that you understand why this HPA axis is so important and so vital, not only to physical health, but also mental health, let's talk about some easy steps you can start taking in order to help sort of tame it or turn it down or whatever you want to talk about. When I talk to clients, one of the analogies I use is of a bath. Our excitatory chemicals, or our HPA axis, when it's activated, it's like turning up that hot water, full bore. Now, you don't want to sit in a bath that is exclusively hot water. It would burn you. It would be uncomfortable. You also don't want to sit in a bath that's exclusively cold water because, that would be miserable as well. What we're trying to do is help the HPA axis balance the excitatory chemicals in our body and all of those systems that keep us revved up, as well as the calming systems in our body, recognizing when there actually is a threat and when there actually is no threat. So back to the basics. First thing we can do is nutrition. All of the chemicals in our body, our hormones, from our gonadal hormones like testosterone and estrogen, to our thyroid hormones, to our neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine and yada, yada, yada. All of those are made from the foods that we eat. If we don't provide our body with the building blocks to make the food or to make the hormones, then it's not going to be able to operate well. Think about concrete. And I am not expert on concrete, but I do know there are multiple different things that go into making concrete. It's not just sand. It's not just water. You have to have the right mix in the right amount of the different things. And if you don't, then your concrete is not going to be stable. You don't want to build a foundation for your house or walls for your house or anything else out of concrete that doesn't have the right amount of the right types of ingredients. The same thing is true for our nutrition. We need to fuel our body with relatively healthy nutrition. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a health nut. I'm not saying you have to be vegan or vegetarian or omnivore or anything like that. What I'm saying is be reasonable. If you are eating chips and soda and beer as your pretty much exclusive diet, that is not cutting it. You need to try to eat colorfully. 3 colors on your plate at every meal. That will help you start getting variety. Skittles and M&Ms and condiments don't count. So you want to have fruits, vegetables, grains in there, as long as there's no major reason why you can't have some of those things. Obviously, talk with your doctor or a registered dietitian if you have special nutritional issues. Hydration is really important. Our body communicates, our cells communicate in a fluid environment. If we don't have enough fluid, then it's going to slow down that transmission. When we are as little as 1% dehydrated, it starts impairing our concentration. So we do need to pay attention to hydration. Drink water. Add a little lemon to it or infuse it with some fruit. Or if you really can't tolerate any of that, look for some sort of decaffeinated additive. Preferably clear water or with a little bit of lemon or something. That's your best option. But if you have to go to some non-caffeinated flavoring, that's better than nothing. Caffeine, by its very nature, turns up that HPA axis. It's a stimulant. It causes your HPA axis to turn up that hot water, to turn up the heat. So when you drink caffeine, yeah, it helps you wake up a little bit for a few minutes, but you're also draining that HPA axis, and it's kind of hard on the HPA axis. If you can get to the point that you have reduced your caffeine, or eliminated it preferably, but reduced your caffeine, that will help your HPA axis. Caffeine can stay in your system for up to 12 hours. So the caffeine that you drink at noon or eat, if you're talking about a candy bar or something, the caffeine that you have at noon may still be impairing your sleep and keeping you revved up to midnight. That's important to know. If you're trying to improve your sleep, it's really important to eliminate or minimize caffeine, especially after noon. Nicotine has a much shorter half-life, but it's about 2 hours. It's important to know if you're smoking or using nicotine-based products within 2 to 4 hours of bed that it can also impair your sleep. Nicotine has components in it that are going to rev up that HPA axis and make you feel a little bit more elated. It's not the stimulant type feeling that you get from caffeine, but there is a part of what nicotine does. It does a lot of things, which is kind of interesting, but that's a whole different class. Part of what nicotine does is activate that HPA axis. And alcohol reduction. When we initially drink alcohol, it may help you feel calmer. It may help you drift off to sleep faster. The first couple of hours after you drink alcohol tend to be, or maybe hour, depending on your tolerance, tend to be more in a relaxant state. But as the alcohol starts to leave your system, you start to have increased anxiety, increased blood pressure, increased respiration, all signs of increased stress response system activation. Alcohol impairs sleep the last half or 2/3 of the night, and alcohol during the day will activate that HPA axis. So if you're trying not to unduly stress it, then reducing alcohol is helpful. Now, if you have been drinking alcohol regularly, it is really important that you don't detox without medical supervision, because even if you've been drinking heavily for a short period, like binge drinking, alcohol detoxification can be life-threatening, which is one of the reasons that they considered liquor stores essential businesses during the whole COVID thing. It is important to make sure that you are under doctor's observation, or at least a doctor knows what you're doing. So that's my little speech on alcohol. Sleep is another thing that you can do to help re-regulate your HPA axis, or at least not overactivate it. Go to bed about the same time. Practice sleep hygiene. There are a lot of videos on this YouTube channel that talk about sleep hygiene. But the basics are, try to cut back that caffeine within 12 hours of bed. When you get up in the morning, get around bright light. Try to stay in bright light during the day and start eliminating blue light from your environment 2 hours before bed. And that includes on your mobile devices, on your televisions, on your computer screens, and from the light bulbs overhead. Preferably have bulbs in whatever room you sit in the evening that are way down on that yellow spectrum, your super soft white bulbs. I think it is like 2500 Kelvin and lower is really where you want to be. And during the daytime, 5000 Kelvin and higher is preferable in order to help you keep your circadian rhythm set. Circadian rhythms regulate when the cortisol is excreted, which is supposed to be first thing in the morning, and it tapers throughout the rest of the day. Part of that is controlled by light. When we are regulating our circadian rhythms, it will help with our sleep. Making sure you've got a good sleep environment that's not too noisy, not too hot, not too allergenic. All of those are things that you can do to improve your sleep. When you are getting better quality sleep, you are going to be less foggy-headed. You'll find it's easier to concentrate, and you will be assisting in the rehabilitation, if you want to think of it that way, of your HPA axis. You're giving your body a break where it's not pushing that gas pedal and revving you to be ready for fight or flee. Additionally, with circadian rhythms, another good thing that you can do is get a little bit of sunlight every day. During the lockdown, too many people were staying inside too much of the time. You don't have to be outside a bunch, 10 minutes a day. And you don't even have to be out in direct sunlight necessarily. But a little bit of direct sunlight is good because it enhances your body's vitamin D. Vitamin D deficiencies are hugely associated with depressive symptoms. It's really helpful for your mood, for your energy, and for your circadian rhythms and your sleep, as well as your stress response system, if you get a little bit of sunlight every day and try to keep those circadian rhythms in sync. Look for environmental modifications to enhance your feeling of safety so you can relax. Look around. Make your environment as relaxing as possible with colors and images and pictures and things that make you happy, that make you feel relaxed, that make you feel safe. Add sounds that help you feel calm and eliminate sounds that cause you stress. I was talking to somebody the other day who has PTSD, and apparently in their neighborhood, people are going wild like every day with fireworks, and that is triggering that person's PTSD, and it's not allowing them to relax and feel safe in their own home. Sometimes you have to resort to things like noise-canceling headphones, earplugs, something like that. If you are in an environment where there is noise, street noise, neighbor noise, whatever, that you have no control over. And finally, smells, which are one of the greatest triggers of our memories. Putting smells in your environment that trigger happy thoughts, happy feelings, happy memories, things that when you smell them, you're just like, that's what you want in your environment. And you want to eliminate as many noxious smells as possible. But a lot of times with smells, it's about adding things that bring up feelings of relaxation. Oxygenation is important as well. Breathing. When we're stressed, we tend to breathe rapidly and shallowly. So we're not getting that oxygenated blood through our body nearly as efficiently. Practice belly breathing. And it's really simple. Put your hand on your belly, or don't. Breathe in for 4, feeling your belly expand. Hold for 4, and exhale for 4. 2 benefits of this. Number 1, you are increasing the oxygen in your body, which will increase your energy as well as help promote relaxation, because when you slow your breathing, it slows your heart rate. When your heart rate slows down, your HPA axis kind of responds in turn by promoting the rest and digest instead of the fight or flee chemicals in your body. Mindfulness also can help you. Mindfulness is focusing on the moment, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But mindfulness means noticing without judgment how you feel emotionally and physically right now and what you need emotionally and physically right now. Do you need to stretch because, if I'm being mindful, I notice that my back is starting to hurt? A lot of times we focus so much on autopilot, we don't pay attention to what our body is telling us. Mindfulness can help you figure out exactly where you're at and what you need in order to be your happiest and healthiest at the moment. Again, there are lots of videos on mindfulness on the YouTube channel. Just search any of the videos below, but it is important to start practicing that. You can also search online for mindfulness techniques. Finally, psychological flexibility. Psychological flexibility means focusing on what you have in the moment, kind of goes along with that mindfulness thing, that makes your life rich and meaningful. Instead of thinking, I will be happy when, I will be content when, I can relax when, focusing on, okay, there's a lot of stuff that I want. Most people have stuff that they want, but what do I have right now that I can be grateful for that makes my life rich and meaningful? What is going on in my life that I can say, okay, things, I do have some things. Things are going pretty well in these areas. May not be every area. So that's the first part of psychological flexibility. The second part is choosing to use the energy to do things that will help you move toward those people and goals that will enhance your idea of a rich and meaningful life. I can choose to use my energy today to do things that will help me get closer to those things that I really want in the future. I recognize what I've got now and I'm grateful for it. And I want to keep growing. And I want to keep moving forward. And I can choose whether I use my energy to get frustrated about what they're saying on the news or what people are doing in the world that I have no control over, or I can focus on using my energy for making a difference in my little corner of the world. Those are some quick tips that can help you. And if you look up Abraham Maslow, he presented a pyramid of needs. And our most basic needs are those of biological needs, our nutrition, our sleep, a safe environment, as well as safety in the way we're thinking and how we use our energy, and hope that things can get better. I've presented you with some places you can get started. It is not the be all end all, but it gives you some areas to look at to go, you know what? Maybe I can start making one change today. Just make one change. And then maybe make another change tomorrow or next week. You don't have to change everything overnight. Pick one thing to start changing, to start helping you heal and re-regulate, if you want to think of it that way, your HPA axis or your stress response system in order to promote resilience.